Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a new top meta threat in the Open Ultra League, Shadow Feraligator. With the Season 18 move update, it got access to Shadow Claw, and this new fast move has completely unlocked its potential. It's now ranked number 2 for the Ultra League on PvPoke, and after testing it out in some Ultra League practice battles, I can say without a doubt, this rank is absolutely justified. This thing is a menace, its energy is incredibly hard to punish, and it can flip matchups it has no business flipping. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out the buff to Shadow Feraligator. Nightmare lead in the first match, Como-O versus Charmalolan Ninetales. I save switch into the Shadow Feraligator, and the opponent responds with Registeel. Shadow Feraligator in the Ultra League, with a 2 Shadow Claw head start, can guaranteed flip the 2 shield versus Registeel, even if it's the rank 1 Registeel, and even if they get 2 Zap Cannon debuffs. Granted, judging by the damage I did to this Registeel, this is probably closer to a raid rank Registeel, but still, running the Sims on PvPoke is just absolutely unbelievable what this thing can do on the save switch. And Registeel is entirely reliant on landing charge attacks to do any meaningful damage. They got 1 debuff, but they did not get the second, and look at this, I'm going to exit this matchup with energy and almost at full HP. That thing has an electric move. It's supposed to be able to KO Feraligator. It's an Ultra League Registeel. One of the tankiest Pokemon in the format. Shadow Feraligator up 2 Shadow Claws just completely obliterates the thing. In comes the Ninetales, and the Ninetales is already going to be deep into the red health. Ninetales is going to get simultaneously KO'd. That is 2 full Pokemon just completely KO'd by the Feraligator. At this point, I mean, they have a Stunfisk in the back, I have a Como-O and an Empoleon. The opponent knows it's over, so they're just going to stop tapping here. I believe they had actually tabbed out of their app at this point, so I'm just going to fast forward through farming them down. Moving to the next match, leading Como-O versus Registeel. This is not a bad spot to be in whatsoever as the Como-O, as of course I'm going to be able to withstand a Focus Blast and look to farm up energy. Opponent tries for a catch onto Jellicent, and I'm going to respond with the Shadow Feraligator. Now it might feel a bit strange sending in a Shadow Feraligator into a Jellicent, where of course Feraligator's energy is completely walled. But look at the damage output of this thing. These Shadow Claws are adding up, and Resisted Hydro Cannon does a lot. The Hydro Cannon connects, I can throw 3 Shadow Claws, go for the CMP tie, and this should be enough to knock out. Let's see, Shadow Feraligator picks up the KO, opponent is going to send back in the Registeel. I'm farming up massive energy with the Feraligator, firing off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to be no-shielded by the Registeel. Registeel will throw just before I'm able to make the Hydro. I should be able to farm up to at least 1 more Hydro Cannon, so I am going to overfarm here. Oh, but I make a big mistake. I overfarm 1 past, and I believe that's a CMP tie. It is, and I lose my second Hydro Cannon. Oh, that is extremely unfortunate there, as now I can send in the Empoleon in the back. My opponent has their own Shadow Feraligator. And this is going to be a bit uncomfortable. They can survive a Drill Peck here. I should wall their energy, as in the Ultra League, most of the time people should be running Hydro Cannon and Ice Beam, just because of how common Dragon types are. It feels like Ice Beam is a must. The opponent there actually ends up waiting. That actually is not lag right there. They end up waiting to see if I combo play with the Como-O, but I don't. I actually end up getting to farm down, and I'm going to be able to take the win with Registeel there. It was definitely a mind game where they had to try and pause to see, am I going to combo play, but I didn't, and I'm able to take the game. Terrible lead in the next match, Como-O versus Tapu Fini, and I'm going to send in the Shadow Feraligator. There's no way that Shadow Feraligator has a good matchup here where all of its charge moves are resisted, right? Surely not. The Hydro Cannon, oh look, the Tapu Fini's already below half health. And if I get this shield call right, it's a completely winning matchup. They're now going to send in Gallade. Gallade up a shield is incredibly scary to deal with. I fire off the Hydro Cannon, I get the shield, opponent is going to play to the CMP tie. This is a bit awkward. I decided to actually shield at the very last second there. You couldn't even really see me press the shield button as I hit it right at the last second. I do decide that I want to save the Feraligator. So I'm just going to save the Feraligator and send in Como-O, as I feel like Feraligator can probably have some play in the endgame. They go for the close combat. That does massive damage. They're going to have to go for the close combat here if they want to pick up the knockout. It is just going to be the Leaf Blade. I go for the Dragon Claw, but the clock's up for my opponent, and they make a nice switch, catching the Dragon Claw onto Tapu Fini, where it's double resisted. And now I can wait my timer, send in Empoleon, and fully commit to a Steel Wing farm down. To be honest, on this team, I really liked how Como-O played. Como-O, even though I was running close combat instead of its new move Brick Break, I feel like it did very nicely. Empoleon, strangely enough, was the Pokemon that I didn't really feel like necessarily carried its weight as much, although I believe we'll see more of that as these battles go on. But Feraligator was just S tier. It was just genuinely unbelievable. There's the Skeledirge in the back. The poor Skeledirge just has absolutely nowhere to run, and you best believe Shadow Hydro Cannon, that's going to be goodbye to the Skeledirge. Alligator on Crocodile Violence as we're able to take the win. Tough lead in the next match, Como-O versus Defense Deoxys. I save switch into Shadow Feraligator. My opponent is going to go for the Psycho Boost and dip, and they send in Greedent. Of course, since I've taken a lot of damage from the Psycho Boost, I have no way of playing for switch advantage at this moment, but from full health, I was doing some research on Shadow Feraligator before this video, and it looks like if you have a very HP-weighted Shadow Feraligator up a Shadow Claw, it actually has the ability to flip the 2s versus a Greedent counter switch, which is just an absolutely absurd thing to have happen. They're going to send in the Greedent. Greedent will fire off the Body Slam. I'm going to look for the farm down with the Como-O, but the rule of thumb for Greedent is it can always make one more charge move, and it does as it makes it to the Body Slam. This is a bit uncomfortable. They can send in the Deoxys, but my Dragon Claw does not do a lot here. Defense Deoxys has definitely seen a bit of a fall in terms of usage, but it is so bulky in the Ultra League. I don't really want to take super effective counters, so I'm going to shield the Psycho Boost, expecting them to switch, and now they send in the Guzzlord. And I do have the Shadow Empoleon, which of course is going to be resisting Dragon Tails, while consistently hitting for neutral with Steel Wing and Drill Peck. Tough call to make. I only have one shield remaining. I think I want to save it for a Psycho Boost, so I'm going to let this through. The Crunch connects. That does huge damage. I continue to farm with the Shadow Empoleon and fire off the Drill Peck. Let's see this damage. Drill Peck onto the Guzzlord. Guzzlord able to tank that very comfortably and get the farm down. Ooh, that is really not ideal. I'm going to commit the shield as my Dragon Tail will KO, but I just don't have a way of doing enough damage to this Defense Deoxys before it makes it to a Psycho Boost. So I'm going to go for the Dragon Claw. Opponent still has a shield left. I mean, a Dragon Claw won't KO here anyway, and they will make it to the Psycho Boost. But overall in that endgame, I definitely didn't feel like Shadow Empoleon was necessarily pulling its weight. I had high hopes for it in the Ultra League, but honestly, I felt like it was a little bit of a weak link with this team. Como-O versus the Giratina, but this is the Dragon Breath Giratina. Oh, this is actually a bit uncomfortable. I'm going to stay in with the Como-O, fire off the Dragon Claw, grab a shield, and now it is Shadow Feraligator time. Opponent is going to be firing off energy. That's perfectly okay with me, and I'm just going to continue to farm up. What does my opponent want to do? They're going to send in Annihilate. Really good to bait this out, as that way my Empoleon won't get stuck up against the fighter, and I already have back-to-back Hydro Cannons. The speed of how fast this Shadow Feraligator charges is crazy, and it hits extremely hard as well. Can I make one more Hydro? No, I cannot. Just as I make the Hydro, I get farmed down. They're only getting one move off here because the Dragon Tail did go through, and I can survive the Ice Punch. My opponent sends in that Giratina. Were they able to react in time to the switch into the Empoleon? No, they were not. It is going to be the Dragon Claw, and they're staying in. This is very interesting. The fact that they're staying in here, I'm going to decide to play it a little risky, just shield and go for a full farm down. Empoleon gets the full farm down. What do they have in the back? They have, oh, I saw that water ground typing. We know what that is. That's a Swampert, and Swampert will cleanly get two-shot here by the Hydro Cannons. I can go for Hydro Cannon number 2. That's going to be goodbye to that Swampert as we're able to take the win. Tough lead in the next match, Como-O versus Cresselia. I'm going to save switch into the Shadow Feraligator. Believe it or not, despite the fact that Shadow Feraligator only has neutral charge attacks and Cresselia has Grass Knot, Shadow Feraligator wins the 1s and the 2s here. It is just unbelievable what this Pokemon can do. I do decide to shield. I'm hoping this is going to entice my opponent to shield back, because ideally, I would love to play out one of my winning shield scenarios. I fire off the Hydro Cannon, but my opponent knows better, understanding that they do not win if they shield. They let it go. That does quite a lot of damage. They're going to send in their own Feraligator and look for a farm down. I do make the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will add up, and now I can send in Como-O. Well, they're actually running the non-Shadow Feraligator, so they have a little bit of extra bulk, but they really don't have the damage output. They are running the Ice Beam. That does quite a lot of damage. I'm going to fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw plus a Dragon Tail should be enough to knock out here, and down goes Feraligator. They still do have that Cresselia, but they don't send it in. They send in the Annihilate, and I just no longer have a way to win this game, unfortunately. Shadow Empoleon is going to get stuck going up against the Annihilate. I just no shield, as there's just no way I win this. The Shadow Ball plus a counter is going to get the knockout, and I can send in the Feraligator, but they're farming that one down as well. Hopping into the next match, we see a familiar lead, Como-O versus the Registeel. I do outpace here, as I do make it to the close combat when they make the Focus Blast, but I win charge attack priority. But of course, I'm going to wait until after they Focus Blast, so I can take that damage before I debuff my defense. I decided to go for the close combat right away, expecting them to not switch instantly, and I'm able to successfully grab the shield. They send in Giratina, and I'm going to respond with the Shadow Empoleon. In hindsight, it would have been better to send in the Shadow Feraligator, but honestly, I was finding that Shadow Feraligator was so neutral into so many things that I would rather kind of get the Empoleon out of the way, where it's not aligned against like an electric type or a fighter. I'm able to land the Drill Peck. They're going to be firing off the Shadow Sneak. Shadow Sneak is going to get the Empoleon low. Empoleon able to make it to one final Drill Peck. I decided to go for an undercharge because I want to leave it at 1 HP after the Steel Wing, but unfortunately, after the Shadow Claw, they're able to hang on, and they will make it to a move. I was hoping to put it into one Shadow Claw range, but unfortunately, a slight misplay on the undercharge there. I do have Shadow Feraligator with an energy advantage. In comes Registeel. Opponent, oh, they read me like a book. They catch the Hydro onto their own Shadow Feraligator. Oh my goodness. I'm looking to farm up energy here. Gonna switch into the Como-O after I've banked a bunch of energy, and I decided to commit a shield, which is a bit odd, to be honest, but after I switched out and didn't get a catch right away, I was thinking, you know what? It's probably worth it to try and force the final shield. Opponent tries for the farm down, but Como-O barely able to hang on, make the Dragon Claw, pick up the KO. Back in comes the Registeel. Registeel has energy, but so does the Feraligator. They need 2 charge attacks to knock out here. The Hydro is going to connect. It looks like if they get the debuff, this could get a bit awkward. The opponent goes for a Focus Blast. They mentioned after the battle that they accidentally misclicked there and they meant to go for the Zap Cannon. If they got the debuff, it genuinely would have been close, whereas with no debuff, Feraligator is going to get the farm down and take that game. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Como-O versus the Gliscor. I save switch into the Shadow Feraligator, and this is one of the few things that you can confidently switch into a Feraligator and know that you're going to keep switch. The XL level 50 Lantern. Now, Lantern does have its fair share of meta matchups where it struggles immensely. Like, it just gets completely obliterated by Cresselia, Giratina, and a wide variety of other metamons. But I do think we'll see slightly more XL Lanterns than usual, just due to the fact that it's one of the only things that you can switch in and completely shut down the Shadow Feraligator. Here I'm going to undercharge the Dragon Claw to get a little bit of extra energy. Opponent saves the Lantern for later. They aggressively switch in the Gliscor. I fire off the close combat, and I'm going to send in the Empoleon. If I get the shield call right, if it is the Earthquake, I should be able to Steel Wing down, and they're only going to make it to a Night Slash, and they do full send the Earthquake. They decide to get the damage that they can, going for the Night Slash. That's perfectly okay. I should hopefully be in a good spot now that I do have switch. The Lantern's on like 1 HP, so realistically, they can only get maybe 1 spark of damage. In the back, it's Registeel, so I would have been completely hard countered, but since my opponent gave up switch, I may have a chance. I have a lot of energy, but they do have the shield advantage. Of course, they do immediately burn that shield right there. I'm going to send in the Como-O, and I decide to commit a shield. I would love to be able to get shields down. That would be preferred. I just have to watch for a catch. I'm farming up to the close combat. Oh no, and I don't wait a turn, and that loses me the game on the spot. Oh man, I should have been more patient. Perfect overfarm there by the opponent. They throw just before I make it to the Dragon Claw, and I just don't have a win con here, as I'm going to try and double up, but I just don't see me winning this. I go for the Hydro Cannon. They still have a shield. They can shield. Empoleon falls 1 Steel Wing short. So I was basically hard countered. The opponent giving up switch gave me an opportunity, but the catch is going to seal it. Hopping into the final match, terrific lead, Como-O into Greninja. Opponent save switches into Galarian Weezing, and bad news for the Weezing, in comes the Shadow Empoleon. Steel Wing hitting for super effective damage. They go for the overheat. That does quite a lot of damage, but Shadow Empoleon is able to hang on. I'm now going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to hit for some heavy neutral damage and pick up the knockout onto the Weezing. Greninja's going to have a very awkward time trying to farm down here. So the opponent is actually going to send in their third, which is Tentacruel. Tentacruel, these poison jabs, of course, are heavily resisted due to the steel subtyping. Firing off the Drill Peck. The Drill Peck not going to do a lot of damage. I think, honestly, that was probably one of my main, I would say, points of dissatisfaction with running the Shadow Empoleon, is it just really feels like Drill Peck doesn't do the damage that you want it to do. The Steel Wing Hydro Cannon combination honestly feels like it works out very nicely in the Ultra League, but in the Ultra League, non-same type attack bonus Drill Peck just doesn't really have the damage output that I would typically prefer. So I do think that a Dragon plus Shadow Feraligator is going to be an extremely strong core. I'm probably going to play test different thirds, as I didn't really feel like Ultra League Shadow Empoleon lived up to what I was hoping that it could do. My opponent, they're not going to be able to get that Water Shuriken down. They're forced to throw energy here. It is the Night Slash. Thankfully, they do not get the boost. In comes the Tentacruel. It looks like I didn't get a Shadow Claw through there somehow. The Scald is going to connect. Well, maybe I did after all, and it just didn't show it, but the visuals were extremely weird with the game today. They go for another Scald, but I should be able to get this Shadow Claw farm down and exit with the back-to-back Hydros. Greninja is going to win Charge Attack priority, forcing at least one of my shields, but I will be able to easily get the KO here with the Hydro Cannon. So in the battle of the water starters, the Shadow Feraligator emerges victorious. All in all, I can't say enough nice things about the Shadow Claw Shadow Feraligator in the Open Ultra League. It's a hyper flexible Pokemon, so even when you get alignment that isn't great, this thing is extremely good at fighting back in that negative alignment to still keep you in matches, which I think is extremely important. I would say it reminds me a lot in terms of its neutrality with something like Greedent, where Greedent, you can basically put anywhere on a team and it's going to be really consistent. I think Feraligator, I mean, granted, Greedent is a lot more like bulk focused, whereas Feraligator is a lot more offensive focused, but in terms of their pure neutrality and their consistency, I really feel like we're going to be seeing a massive amount of Shadow Feraligator. If people have them, they're going to be running them. This thing is unbelievable. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.